Welcome to the April the 12th, 1994 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie, as we bring you the history of our city and some of the people that have helped to make that history. Today is no exception. We have an esteemed gentleman with us today that is not a resident of our city. However, he has done very, very much as far as contributions to our city is concerned, and we're very pleased today for our history tape number 221 to welcome Mr. Irving L. Tag Taggart. Tag, welcome to the set, young man.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Now, Mr. Taggart wears many hats, but you usually see him in one of those wonderful Stetsons because he is an important gentleman in one of the greatest business adventures that has ever come to Grand Prairie, Texas. And we're saluting him today as a person, as a business, and part of the history that he has made. Now, Mr. Taggart, we'd like for you to look out into your camera and give us a little bit about your genealogy, and especially we'd like you to name drop your wife and your family.
All right, Ruthie, it's my family came to this country and going way back. They're Irish extraction. My great-grandfather came over here in 1871, and had 16 children. And I was born and raised and educated in Northern California on the ranch country. And when I was in college, the World War II was brewing, and they had some big, distinguished-looking commander with wings on his chest come and talk to us about flying for the Navy. The war hadn't started yet. This was in '41, and fraternity brother and myself joined up in the Navy, and we were supposed to be able to finish school, but about a month later we were in, but they gave us credit for our last year, which was a relief because I wasn't doing very good in a couple of subjects anyway. But so I flew airplanes for the Navy during World War II and got out, but I had an engineering degree and went to work with a company in engineering and heavy earth moving equipment. And then I left that company and joined one of Bankers Investment Company, which was a large financial company and headquartered up in Kansas. And I was recruited by a headhunter out of New York to take over a company in Fort Worth, the old Texas Consumer Finance Company. They were having problems, and I came down for that in 1961. And after I got through with that experience of about 6 years, I had a consulting firm. I had an electronics manufacturing firm in Fort Worth. I sold it and had a consulting firm because I'd had pretty good history of turning a couple companies around in my experience. And so I did that, and while I was traveling, I would go to anything that was indigenous to the area. If it was a flea market, a farmer's market, a fish market, or whatever was common to the area. And I'd worked and have been chief executive officer for 2 large companies, counting one that I started. And I'd always made a lot of money for a lot of stockholders, but I decided I wanted to do something. I set a criterion. You didn't ask for all this, but you're getting it.
That's good. Go for it.
I set a criterion. I wanted to do something that I thought would be fun to operate, all cash business, and depression-proof. And that's when I came up with the idea of a huge flea market. Now everybody says it's a lot more than a flea market, but what do you call it? So the idea, and I wanted to stay in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We've lived in the same house for 33 years in Fort Worth. Raised 5 children, and my 2 oldest, Karen Fitzgerald, lives in Louisiana, and my second daughter, Kathleen, and her husband and 2 little girls, one of them 16 now, in Fort Worth. She teaches in Fort Worth high schools. And my oldest son, Tim Taggart, is in Arkansas. And John Taggart, he was a the second son is in the cattle business, and he worked with me for 6 years at Traders Village and decided to go out on his own. And then Pat Taggart, the youngest one, he has 2 boys, and they live in Aledo. So I've got 3 of them and 9 grandchildren, or it'll be 9th one coming up.
That's wonderful. That's great. Now, we better name drop Virginia or you're in bad trouble.
Yeah, so I married Virginia many years ago. Virginia was both her parents were doctors, and she was raised in South Dakota, and I met her during the war at the Naval Air Station out of Pasco, Washington. A year later, we were married, and that was in 1944. And after I got out of the Navy, I went through that procedure where I was in the finance business and manufacturing and finance business. And I started planning for a market of this size about 1970. And when I was doing all this traveling, I never did like to travel, but I'd be away from home too much. But as I said, I would spend time looking around, and that's when I came up with the idea of putting a group together and building a market similar to Traders Village.
And all of this is while you were living in Fort Worth, Texas,
yes,
right?
Ma'am.
All right. And then the procedure you followed, the group is interesting.
Well, I originally had a group of partners in Dallas, of bankers, of 8 or 10 partners that were going to put in $200,000 to $300,000 apiece, and I was going to operate it and have 25% ownership and so forth. And I'd known J.C. Pace, and J.C. Pace is the man with Mr. Kimball, founded the Buddy Supermarket and built the Buddy Supermarket chain. I've been on a board with him, knew him very well, and I ran into him one Saturday afternoon at the country club. I was going to play golf. And he said, his 2 sons with him, Joe and Gary, they were having lunch. Said, sit down and eat with us. And I had lunch with him. What are you doing? I said, I'm going to build a flea market. And he said, what in the world's a flea market? Of course, I've always been kind of an enthusiastic guy, and I proceeded to tell him what it was, and he said, well, where can we look at one of those? And I said, well, a friend of mine in California has a large one in San Jose, California. He said, well, let's go look at it. And I said, well, fine, I'll make arrangements next week. J.C. was a real entrepreneur and very impulsive. He said, well, what are you doing now? He said, let's go out now. This is a weekend. So nothing to do, and at that time, J.C. was on the airport, DFW airport board, the second in command under Mr. Johnson, who was running it. He was one of the originals. So he called the airport, and we got on the airline, went out there and got there about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and he looked at it for a day and a half, was impressed with that, and on the way back on the plane, he said, Tag, he said, how'd you like to trade 10 partners for 1? And I said, I'll do that all day long, sitting down. I wouldn't even think about it, and that's the way it all started. And I'll have to give credit to the former city manager here, Cliff Johnson. He found out about this. We were looking at some property in Arlington, and he found out about this, and he said, well, Mr. Taggart, why don't you come over and look at what we have over here? And we ended up in Grand Prairie, bought the land from your former mayor for 10 years.
C.P. Wagner.
C.P. Wagner. And a little interesting story there. We were out and we proceeded and started construction in about February of 1973.
All right, we're going to have to get this and show and tell while we're doing all of that, aren't we? Because it became headlines in the Grand Prairie News in 1973.
Yeah, it said that with 70,000 people are expected to be out there, and everybody thought that that's the joke of the year. And we've had days when we've had 85, or weekends when we've had 85,000.
Yes.
We had almost 70,000 last week at the chili cook-off. But this is Joe and Gary Pace, the two on the end, and myself and the two realtors from Hudson and Hudson that sold us the land.
All right.
A little aside from that, the owner, or the former owner, the farmer who was sharecropping it, had a cotton crop there, and we paid him considerable for the land. And he said, well, now, I said, can you hold off for a month or two till I can harvest this cotton? I said, no. He just almost cried, but he was, but it was a cotton field when we went out there.
All right, we have another show and tell. If you'll hold this one up for us, not in front of your face, but about right here, and see if we can. This is in 1973, and then it has grown to this in 1983, and we have another 10 years, and we're going to show and tell a picture of that in just a few minutes. But
that's right.
Isn't that exceptional?
Mm-hmm.
After you got all of this built and everything, Mr. Taggart, on opening day, was that exciting for you?
It certainly was.
Yes.
We had the traffic. We promoted it. At that time, Mayfield Road was called Beatty Road, and 360 wasn't in place, I-20 wasn't in place, Great Southwest Parkway wasn't in place. There was only two-lane road that ran in front of it. We had them blocked up, and I'll never forget, I got a call from the toll plaza. At that time was a toll road. I-30 was a toll road. They said, you got cars backed up clear to the toll road here. He says, what are you doing down there?
All right, now let's show and tell. Now that shows some of the cars that are parked here, and that isn't all of it, is it?
No.
How many acres do you have in parking spaces?
Well, we can park 7,000 cars.
7,000 cars.
There's 106 acres, and there's about 38 of it is actual market, and the rest of it's parking and warehouse.
Yes. Oh, and that's wonderful. And here you even have a huge water tank just to the north of your facility.
That's right.
And at the time this picture was taken, is the arena there for the rodeo?
Right. It's right here in the foreground.
Right here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right in this area. Oh, that is an exciting adventure. Now, in beginning this, how many businesses did you draw at that time during the 1973 as far as your stalls or your companies that operate at Traders Village?
We have approximately 1,700 numbered spaces. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean you have 1,700 individual dealers. Some of them will have 2 and 3 spaces.
Yes.
We'll have anywhere from 1,000 to 1,300 different merchants out there on any given good day, good weekend.
The exciting thing I think that I've noticed about this, and one of the most wonderful additions, is that you have an RV section. Tell us about what brought that about.
Well, that's successful for the wrong reason, to be honest with you. I thought at the time, and I convinced Mr. Pace, my partner, that the dealers would come in RVs and use the RV park. So he was an RV enthusiast. He said, well, let's build one down there. So we built about 60 spots. That's now into 212 spots, and it's the largest RV and the highest rated RV park in the area. And none of them are dealers. They're all from all over the United States. You can go down there anytime and see cars from Maine, Ohio, Washington, Oregon, just you name it. They're from everywhere. And we have become a kind of a bedroom city for a lot of the attractions for those who travel in RVs. So it's been a very successful venture on its own.
Other than the fact that you're a business entrepreneur and you have all of these different little mini businesses located in your park, a highlight, several things that happen during the year. You have these special days. Like, first of all, let's talk about the Indian powwow. What brought that on, and you might want to name drop some of the people that help you do all this good stuff, like old Doug Beek, who really takes wonderful pictures such as this.
Yeah. Doug Beek is our PR director and has been for 19 years. 19 years? Yeah.
And this is the Indian powwow. What started that?
Well, that's always the weekend after Labor Day every year. Mm-hmm. But all of these special events are unique to Traders Village in this respect. Ruthie, when we were out there, the only thing close to us was the airport. And Great Southwest Parkway at that point ended right at the airport.
Yes.
And So we had to get people to know, find out what we had out there. So we made a list of 80 some odd events, everything from cat shows, dog shows, horse shows, model airplane contests, Indian powwows, chili cook-offs,
Antique
Cinco de
cars,
Mayos.
yes.
And, well, we tried them all.
All right.
But each one of them ended up as an attraction. It's kind of interesting to note that people used to come in and say, they came out for one of those special events, and they said, good Lord, we didn't know they had all this out here. So it just fed word of mouth and just fed on itself. And over the years, we went from averaging about 3,000-4,000 people a weekend up to as high as 85,000 people.
All right. This Indian powwow, I know this is well received. I have really enjoyed attending that and seeing all of the artwork and the jewelry. But now this is one of the most exceptional things that you have brought to Grand Prairie, Texas. And let's tell us about your Western days, your rodeo, and all of the good stuff, and how you have been honored over the years for promoting something like this.
Well, the rodeo was that was along in that same line, and about that time, again, Cliff Johnson said, you know, someone was come to the city council to request $25,000 to build a pen where they could have cuttings and small rodeos and one thing and another and work their horses. And I said, well, let's think about that a little bit. And I said, if we build an arena out there and we do something then, kind of a corporate contribution to the city, because rodeo is kind of generic, you know. No one. It's just like Indians. No one can get mad at them. They're unique and the rodeo and Indians are unique to the United States, American Indians. And so they said, well, fine, we won't build one for the city if you're going to go ahead and build one. And like all of these events, Ruthie, we really don't need them anymore, but we have a trademark all over the country of having special events.
Yes.
And we're known as much for that as anything. And we did, when we built the second one down in Houston 5 or 6 years ago, we took the same events and used down there, and not the rodeo because they don't have the ground, but all the rest of the events, and it's helped build the markets.
That's wonderful. And a little bit about the Wranglers and your association with them.
Yeah, over the years, Wayne Hanks, and myself, and primarily, I got him to go to one of the PRCA conventions, and there was someone from Phoenix telling about they called them the Cattle Baron Club, that supported the rodeo, sold tickets, and helped promote it, and so forth and so on. And we said, well, why don't we have that in Grand Prairie? So we came back and started. Wayne was the first president and the only president for 4 years, and is really primarily responsible with the Wranglers and the support of the rodeo, and he still is.
Yes.
And but they're a group of 60 or 70 families, Grand Prairie mostly. We have some honorary members like John Justin and his wife, and several names like that. But the Wranglers and the rodeo is Western days evolved from that, and that's coming up, of course, in the third week in May this year.
You bet.
And I've been on the National Rodeo Association Rodeo Committee board for a number of years. In fact, I was president of it for 3 years. So I've got my teeth cut in a lot of things I didn't know anything about.
All right, and another thing that you're very involved in, the Tourist and Visitors Bureau out of the Chamber of Commerce, and in this metropolitan area, plus the state. Now, you've even gotten your fingers into that, and you've been the state president of the world as far as tourism is concerned. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, there was, the association used to be called Discover Texas Association. It was originally formed with the attractions, the Six Flags and the Wet and Wilds and all the attractions in the state. And when we first came out here, Grand Prairie didn't even have a brochure. They had some flyers, you know, the meter hookups and the telephone hooks up, but they didn't have a flyer for any kind of tourism. And again, I went to the city council and said, we'll do the artwork on this. Let us put together a brochure, and this was 21 years ago. And they said, well, go ahead. And they said, and we brought Doug did most of the work on that, the layout and one thing and another, and put it together, and the city council printed it, and we've had one ever since. But the question you asked me was what I'm wandering around here and forgot what you asked me.
About being the state president of the tourism group.
Yeah, the Discover Texas Association merged with another tourism group, it's TTI, Texas Tourist Industry Association. And it's made up of all the people that are interested in travel and tourism, all your chambers of commerce, convention and visitors bureaus, all the attractions, airlines, bus companies, car rental people, hotels, restaurants. It's statewide.
Real network, isn't it?
It certainly is, and it's very effective, and has been very instrumental in helping Grand Prairie along the line of tourism, and has developed tremendously in the last 20 years. And I served as chairman of that for 2 years.
That doesn't hurt Grand Prairie, not one little bit, because when I would go to state meetings, I would always find someone that knew Tag Taggart at Traders Village, even Mr. Don Clark with the TDOT, the Highway Department, and his travel division.
Before him was Taylor.
Yes, Tom Taylor, who is the mayor of Westlake still, and we keep in touch with him, and he knows about Grand Prairie and Tag Taggart. And I have one picture here I think is very exciting. That is just a smattering of some of the crowds that you all enjoy, I'll put it that way.
That's right.
And let everyone in Videoland know the dates that you're opened at Traders Village, and that they're always welcome as a guest there.
Ruthie, we're open every weekend, rain or shine, from Saturday and Sunday. 3 times a year we're open a third day. We're open the Monday after Memorial Day and the Monday after Labor Day and the Friday after Thanksgiving. Okay. And other than that, it's just 2 days a week.
All right. What's the next big deal coming down the pike for Traders Village? Because last weekend you had the chili cook-off and the pickled quail eating contest, and how exciting was that?
Well, we had almost 70,000 people out, so it was a windy, both days were very windy, but you can't discourage the chili cookers.
You can't.
No.
All right. Are you in a position to tell us who won that, or what the name of the outdoing chili?
I'm embarrassed to tell you. I was back there all day, and the judging took half the afternoon, and I'm embarrassed to tell you I can't tell
That's
you.
all right. That's all right.
Yeah. There was 161 teams.
161 chili teams. I'd like to know who won the pickled quail egg eating contest, but I'll see that probably in the Grand Prairie News probably Wednesday. Yes, and we can be brought up to date on all that. Other than that, coming up next then is our big Western Days, right?
Yeah, we have a little Cinco de Mayo celebration.
Okay.
For one Sunday, one of the radio stations has joined forces with us.
Good.
And that's going to be the weekend prior to the 5th of May.
Yes.
But we're working real hard now on Western Days, and the rodeo tickets are going on sale. They're printed, and they'll be going on sale shortly, and the advertising and promotion will be started, and the wranglers will go to work.
Well, you have something brand new for Western Days that I received a flyer on the other day. It's going to be a golf tournament?
Yeah.
Oh, my.
Well, the Western Days, of course, that's part of the city contribution. I mean, they have art contests and a golf tournament.
The parade?
The parade and free lunches, 2 or 3 free lunches. And I think I know that the bowling alley, one of them, and I think I know Well,
Texas Commerce Bank that used to be
Yeah.
First City. I
Yeah.
believe they're on the docket.
yeah, and I think Graf Chevrolet, and the Ford dealer's a supporter also. So it's just a 5-day celebration for the whole city is the way we look at it. And with the rodeo just acts as a fulcrum to play around, to bring it together, because there again, rodeo is something that everybody can relate to. You don't have to be a cattleman. You don't have to, it's a show, the clowns, the bucking horse, and our rodeo is recognized around the country as one of the better open lot, small time rodeos, and we have gotten recognized that way. And of course, Wayne Hanks was the first rodeo committeeman won the first committeeman of the year award when Justin Boots started making that, and that's been 10 or 12 years ago, and he's the first recipient.
I noticed that you have a lady president, Pam Roberts, I believe, is the Wranglers. We're looking forward to working with her and doing good things. We have about a minute and a half left, and would you look out into your camera and just talk to the young people and just tell them how important it is that they work with their community?
Well, I tell you, the rodeo business, a lot of people used to say, well, why should we work hard to make Taggart or Traders Village any more money? They're doing pretty well on their own. As a matter of fact, it's not a money maker. We subsidize it considerably, but because we feel that it's a corporate contribution to the city and the community, and it's something that everybody can relate to, and they can watch the parade, they can come out and participate, and our tickets are very reasonably priced compared to other rodeos. And I have to tell you, we get top cowboys for our size rodeo because of our location and the time of the year and the way the Wranglers take care of them with the Wrangler tent by feeding them and so forth and so on, and hosting them while they're here. And the golf tournament is one of the deals that we're going to have several of the Cowboys be playing in that golf tournament. It's just another addition to the Western days.
Well, we really do appreciate your being here, Mr. Taggart. We'd like to give you a special salute. As far as we're concerned, you have been not only an entrepreneur, you have brought much recognition to the city of Grand Prairie. You've brought big bucks in sales tax, and we really enjoy that. All the citizens of Grand Prairie are very proud of that, and we're proud of your establishment. And I'm particularly proud of the historical marker that your company researched, and it's out in front of your place there on Mayfield Road, commemorating the cross timbers where the Indians traded. And we want to thank you for adding very much to our city, business and inspiration. And thanks for working with the Chamber and with the city of Grand Prairie.
Well, thank you, Ruthie. It's been a real pleasure, and I might add that I've taken semi-retirement, and what that means is I'll still be around for a few more years. They kicked me up to President Emeritus, and I'll have an office out there, and I just want the day-to-day operation turn over to Ron Simmons, who was my assistant for 8 years, and he was down in Houston. We moved him up here.
I want to thank you very much for being with us today. And this is Ruthie Jackson, and history is as we live and do.